Good evening. Pressure is mounting on the Premier tonight to sack a second minister in the space of a month. This time, one of his cabinet stars. Jo Haylen forced to defend allegations she had a conflict of interest over the appointment of the state's transport boss.
Minister, good morning. I hate to break it to you, but you may be toast.
A difficult breakfast to stomach, but Jo Haylen stuck to her lines.
I've declared everything I'm required to declare, Ben. We've made the declarations we needed to make, and I've made the declarations that I need to make.
What she didn't disclose was a $500 donation made at her election campaign launch party by Josh Murray, the former Labor staffer who the Transport Minister then hand-picked for a $588,000 a year job to run her department, having ignored recruitment advice that said he'd be a significant risk in the job.
There clearly is a conflict of interest. If Josh Murray didn't have Labor connections, would he have been appointed as the Transport Secretary? And we all know the resounding answer is no.
I would never give a senior public service job, a really important job, to someone just because they made a $500 donation to my campaign. That's absurd.
She says she didn't need to tell the interview panel or the Premier about the donation. Chris Minns found out when the Minister's office sent through 3 pages of official briefing notes to wargame a potential public response. So when questions finally came today, the answer had been ready for weeks.
I don't believe that purchasing a ticket to a fundraising dinner constitutes the Minister being influenced in terms of her public duties.
The Minister's been invited to face questions here at a parliamentary committee on Thursday. How the tables have turned since it was John Barilaro facing a grilling at a Labor-led inquiry into his own Jobs for the Boys scandal just a year ago.
Here we see them covering this up. I think she's got to go.
At State Parliament, Liz Daniels, 9 News.
And our state politics reporter Liz Daniels is with me in the studio. Liz, does the minister need to go?
Well, Peter, politics is a game of perception, and this looks terrible. Regardless of whether the Premier or the Minister believes she was influenced by that donation, it always had the potential to be seen as a conflict of interest, and therefore the Minister should have declared it. But ordinarily, Jo Haylen is one of the government's stronger performers, and Peter, that means that in Chris Minns' eyes, she could be worth saving.
All right, Liz, thank you. More tonight about the 3 US Marines killed during a training exercise off Darwin as they begin the journey home. The US President offering his condolences to the families reeling from the loss of their loved ones.
The faces of 3 US Marines killed in a crash a long way from home. 37-year-old Major Tobin Lewis was the executive officer, a highly decorated Marine from Colorado.
He had wanted to be a pilot since he was a tiny boy. My dad was also a pilot, and he would follow him around and help him with his plane.
21-year-old Corporal Spencer Collart, the crew chief, was from Virginia, while 29-year-old Captain Eleanor LeBeau was piloting the Osprey aircraft. Her husband is also a Marine pilot, and she's been hailed a hero for saving the lives of the other 20 Marines on board. Her mother, Victoria LeBeau, said Eleanor was from a military family and were very proud of her, and by giving her life, she saved 20 other people. One of those Marines suffered critical injuries and today, in a delicate operation, was flown to Melbourne for specialist treatment. For the 3 who died in this tragedy, their journey home to the United States has begun. Their bodies will soon arrive here in Darwin after being flown from Melville Island in a repatriation service, I'm told, will be carried out with full military honours. They've left behind a crash site and an investigation into what happened to the doomed aircraft. More radio conversation has emerged from Sunday's disaster.
Guard, we are just declaring an emergency in the vicinity of Melville Island.
Roger, search and rescue is on the way. Requesting you remain in the area and pass any additional details as they come in, please. Search and rescue is requesting if there's fire.
Hey, firm, there is a significant fire in the vicinity of the crash site.
The US President has offered condolences to the families. Today, his spokeswoman expressed his concern over the safety issues of the trouble-plagued Osprey.
When it comes to our military force, he's always going to be concerned. He's always going to want to make sure that they have everything that they need and, of course, that they're safe.
At a sunset service, a group of US Marines left their barracks to attend a memorial service at the Darwin Cenotaph to honour their fallen mates. A minute's silence, a candlelight vigil, joined by first responders, the care flight crews and locals.
It's just such a terrible tragedy. It's not even war. So many young lives.
10 days ago, the Osprey was a headline act at a Gold Coast air show, and Major Tobin Lewis was at the controls. Organisers today saying, from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, we are all heartbroken.
He was doing what he was meant to do, and he did it well to the very end.
A US Globemaster has arrived in Darwin to take the 3 Marines home, where they will be farewelled, not just by family and friends, but a nation in their debt. In Darwin, Damien Ryan, 9 News.
The woman at the centre of the poisonous mushroom mystery has travelled to Melbourne to meet with lawyers. Erin Patterson from Victoria's Gippsland was flanked by her legal representatives and given strict instructions not to speak to the media. A month ago, 3 of her family members died after eating suspected toxic mushrooms contained in the beef Wellington she served for lunch. The mother of 2 has always maintained her innocence. All eyes are on Adelaide, where tomorrow the Prime Minister will announce the date for the Voice referendum. South Australia is shaping as critical to the government's hopes of a successful Yes campaign.
Publicly now.
Warming up in the West.
To vote yes for recognition in our Constitution, to vote yes for listening to a voice, and yes to get better results for our First Peoples of this nation.
Tomorrow, Anthony Albanese will signal the start of a 6-week referendum campaign.
I'm contemplating winning this referendum. I'm focused on winning.
The Yes campaign mobilising on the morning commute, both sides acknowledging millions of voters are tonight undecided.
I've seen a lot about it and I just want to get an understanding, really.
I have no idea about it actually, I'm so sorry.
The Electoral Commission tonight already delivering information pamphlets. 13 million will go out over the next few weeks.
From aged care facilities to suburban homes, from outback stations to high-rise apartments, we're working with Australia Post to deliver the pamphlets right around the country.
The Prime Minister arrived in Adelaide to make the announcement. Tomorrow, the Yes side know to win the referendum, they need to win a majority of Australians, but also 4 of the 6 states. Polls say South Australia will be crucial.
South Australia is absolutely critical to this referendum, as it always has been to any progressive reform in this country.
It's going to be a real battle for the hearts and minds for the Australian public out there.
How am I going, Maggie?
Yeah. Gloves on this afternoon.
So are we going to have a competition as to whose is best?
For a contest of a very different nature.
No pressure.
And we'll put it to a vote.
Soon, all of Australia will decide. And it will be here, Pete, at this community centre north of Adelaide that the Prime Minister will make that announcement. And we're told there'll be a crowd. This venue has been chosen because of the suburb Elizabeth's deep working class roots. That's a cohort of Australians that the Yes campaign, if you believe the polls, are currently struggling to connect with. As for the choice of South Australia as the state, well, tonight the No campaign tell me they believe they have Queensland and WA in their pocket, and that would mean in their eyes, if they win in South Australia, the referendum will be defeated. Pete.
Charles, thank you. A double setback for air travellers tonight. An expansion of Qatar Airways operations in Australia could have driven fares down by as much as 40%. And Qantas is being accused of hoarding unpaid flight credits.
Qatar or Qantas, for anyone buying a ticket, only one thing really matters.
It's price, yeah?
Yeah, price. Price is a big one.
The cheaper the prices, the more travel we do.
And today they were told if the government had agreed to let Qatar Airways expand in Australia, airfares would have plunged.
I'd guess that would be a reduction of at least a third, maybe 40% reduction in airfare.
The Albanese government this week confirmed the decision was made in part to protect Qantas's profitability. And today it was quizzed as to why travellers shouldn't have more choice when booking a flight.
We certainly stand by the decision. I don't accept the premise of underpinning the question.
But competition isn't the only crosswind for Qantas. Unpaid travel credits are now a national talking point.
Smells like a stitch-up to me, and a lot of people think it stinks.
Last week, Qantas said it owes customers $370 million for flights cancelled during COVID. This week, it said the full figure is closer to $500 million. And the airline maintains if those credits aren't used by the end of this year, the window closes and the money will be theirs.
You have put an arbitrary deadline of December this year when people lose that money and the money stays in the pockets of Qantas and Jetstar. And you're seriously telling the Australian public that you don't know how many tens of millions of dollars are involved.
So what we are saying, Senator, is that since March 2020, $3 billion of refunds have been granted.
I've heard that evidence already.
But if you're just a regular old punter with a credit, you can't get your money back.
Chris Kohler, 9 News.
The former top prosecutor in the ACT is launching legal action against the inquiry that ended his career. Shane Drumgold was found to have lost objectivity during the prosecution of Bruce Lerman for the alleged rape of Brittany Higgins. Mr Drumgold announced his resignation last month and is now launching proceedings against the ACT government over the inquiry's findings. Mr Lerman maintains his innocence. BlueScope has been handed a record fine after being taken to court by the ACCC for attempting to fix prices for flat steel products supplied in Australia. The steel giant ordered to pay $57.5 million, the biggest penalty ever imposed for cartel action in the country. The company's former general manager, Jason Ellis, has himself been fined $575,000. Federal MPs are set to receive their biggest pay rise in nearly a decade. Nine's Mark Burrows breaks it down.
After looking at all the economic data, the Remuneration Tribunal has given politicians a 4% pay rise, pretty much in line with the wage price index for the last year at 3.6%. The rise now lifts the base salary of a backbencher to $225,000 a year. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will now pocket $586,000 a year. That's not including allowances. He's doing OK, considering the UK PM is making the equivalent of $313,000. The New Zealand Prime Minister does better on $432,000. And not that he's in it for the money, but US President Joe Biden lifts $621,000 a year. That's a bargain, considering he is the leader of the free world.
Thank you, Mark. An independent report into the future of the state's largest coal-fired plant won't be released for 18 months. Eraring Power Station generates around 20% of the state's energy, but is due to shut down in 2025 and replaced with renewable options. The government's delaying the publication so it can make a call on how that will affect household bills. Residents and tourists were jolted awake in Bali today, many running into the street as a strong earthquake shook islands across Indonesia. The 7-magnitude quake struck in the sea north of the holiday island just before 4 a.m. local time. There were no reports of major damage or significant injuries. A 4-hour failure of the UK's main air traffic control system has interrupted or cancelled the travel plans of an estimated 200,000 people around the world. Airlines are struggling to recover from the disruption, many tonight still cancelling their flights.
After a long wait on the tarmac,
unfortunately the flight has been cancelled.
Passengers are told they're not going anywhere.
Now I've got the logistical nightmare of figuring out how to get you all off the aircraft and your bags, etc.
Scenes like this playing out on planes across the UK and Europe.
We're just sitting on the plane hoping something good will happen. Flight radar is saying that our flight is cancelled, but we're on it.
Travel grinding to a halt on one of the busiest long weekends of the year as an air traffic control glitch causes a system meltdown in airports across Great Britain.
Carnage. There is a queue for the airline information desk that's about a mile long. Bearing in mind nobody at the airline information desk has any information.
crowds at London's Gatwick look for guidance.
Because their systems are down, they don't know which flights have been cancelled, so they won't release us.
This employee ripping up a list of scheduled flights.
What's happened is that the automated systems have failed and therefore procedures are having to be carried out manually.
Which meant only a limited number of planes could take off or land. More than 3,000 flights were due to leave the UK on Monday, another 3,000 due to arrive. Thousands of flights were delayed and hundreds cancelled. The impact extending to airports around the world, affecting hundreds of thousands of passengers. After several hours, engineers identified and remedied the technical issue.
So while the air traffic control computer system has been fixed, airlines are warning that for passengers there might be continuing flow-on effects and headaches for days to come.
There's no indication this was the result of a hack, more likely some sort of IT failure. In London, Brett McLeod, 9 News.
Doctors have extracted a live worm from the brain of a New South Wales woman after she complained of forgetfulness and depression. The 8-centimetre round worm was spotted in an MRI, with the 64-year-old first feeling sick after eating foraged greens in January 2021. It's the first time the parasite, usually found in pythons, has been spotted in a human. Fear gripped a university campus in the US state of North Carolina today. Students climbing out of windows and running from classrooms, trying to avoid an active shooter. Armed police were filmed patrolling the halls looking for the gunman. A faculty member was shot dead before the culprit was arrested. US law enforcement have pulled no punches, dispersing a climate protest blockade that caused traffic to bank up for kilometres in Nevada's Black Rock Desert in the US. The Rangers then handcuffing the activists, forcing them off the road. All right, we have some breaking news now. Incoming RBA Governor Michelle Bullock has been interrupted by protesters during an address in Canberra tonight. Activists emerging in the crowd at the Australian National University in the opening seconds of her speech, saying if rate rises trigger job losses, hers should be the first to go. The group was escorted out by security. Michelle Bullock will take over from outgoing RBA Governor Philip Lowe on the 18th of September. A helicopter on a rescue mission has fallen from the sky in Florida, crashing into an apartment block. Incredibly, 2 of the 3 crew survived, pulling themselves out of the wreck.
A smoking emergency. An EC-135 rescue helicopter spiralling out of control.
We just had an engine failure. We're going to require priority for a runway, please. We're declaring an emergency.
Captured by eyewitnesses from multiple angles before breaking apart. It plummeted into a small apartment block in Pompano Beach, leaving an enormous crater. Miraculously, 2 crew members survived.
You got out?
Yeah. Climbing out of the wreckage.
Oh, this is wild. This is wild. Wow.
Crawling down from the roof.
They did suffer some injuries, but they're going to be able to survive and recover from those injuries.
Their colleague, 50-year-old Captain Terrison Jackson, a paramedic for 19 years, was killed.
Terrison was a rock star. He was one of the best of us, one of the brightest.
Authorities say mechanical issues led to a fire on board. The Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation Safety Board have launched an investigation.
We're going to suffer, we're going to hurt, but this community should know we're prepared to answer the next call.
In the United States, Alison Petrowski, 9 News.
Donald Trump has 2 new dates in his diary. Next Thursday, when the former US president will be arraigned in Fulton County, and March 4 next year, when the trial begins in his federal case in Washington. Both are in relation to Trump's charges of attempting to overturn the 2020 election result. Sir Elton John is recovering at home after spending the night in a Monaco hospital. The 76-year-old was treated for what's been described as minor injuries after a slip at his villa in Nice. They're the playground of thrill seekers and holiday makers, but the white slopes of Europe's ski fields are under threat, according to a new study. It found with just 2 degrees of global heating, a quarter of the continent's resorts will have minimal snow every other year. A major concern as the world is on track to warm by 2.7 degrees. Australian women are working longer than ever. That's according to new data revealing the average age of retirement has increased. But we're yet to see the true impact of the cost of living crisis on our workforce.
Deirdre Fairbairn was the friendly face at the checkout at Coogee Woolworths for 33 years. But last month she retired, aged 74.
It's fun. It was still exciting to go to work, and it was nice to meet people, and you had your own pay packet.
Deirdre might be onto something. Australian Bureau of Statistics data released today shows the average age of retirement has increased by a year to 56 years and 3 months. Women are now working almost 2 years longer, up from 52.1 years in 2018 to 54 years in 2020. While for men, the average age of retirement decreased by 2 months, from 59.5 to 59.3. The average age Aussies intend to retire is 65 and a half, with 673,000 of us planning to do so in the next 5 years, an increase of 121,000. However, this data was collected during the pandemic, prior to the current cost of living crisis, which is putting the squeeze on household budgets.
A couple needs about $70,000 per year, and a single person about $50,000 to have what's a dignified retirement. Now, dignified retirement isn't opulent, it's pretty basic.
While the pension remains the main source of income for retirees, 34% of retired women said they also rely on their partner's income, compared to 7% of retired men. Women are disadvantaged financially for taking time out of the workforce to care for children or elderly relatives.
The key here is for women to get more in their super when they're younger, and putting super on paid parental leave is really important.
As for Deirdre, she's now got plenty of time for new pursuits.
I got the rest of my life, why rush?
In Chifley, Kate Creedon, 9 News.
Low-rise apartments are becoming a thing of the past in New South Wales. New ABS data shows that apartment buildings between 1 and 3 stories high have fallen to 3% of all dwellings from 15% since 1991. 276 buildings with 3 stories or less were approved this year. That's compared to more than 3,000 buildings of 4 to 8 stories and more than 4,000 buildings with 9 stories or more. The vast majority of people diagnosed with pancreatic cancer won't live beyond 5 years. But tonight, a potential drug breakthrough which could buy patients more time. This report from Nine's health contributor, Dr Nick Coatsworth.
Jan Mumford had just given birth to her 3rd child when she received a terrifying diagnosis, pancreatic cancer.
It was scary, and you don't know what is going to happen.
25 years on, she's survived. Remarkable for someone suffering from one of Australia's deadliest cancers.
A new successful treatment gives people so much hope.
That's the aim of researchers at the Garvan Institute, who have discovered a drug to treat pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma, one of the cancer's most common and aggressive forms. Often diagnosed at a late stage, chemotherapy is the only treatment option.
If we can now find a way to make chemotherapy better, patients that only have that option may benefit more.
The drug, combined with chemotherapy, was found to improve the survival rate in mice by 35%.
Importantly, what it also does is it leads to around about a 45% decrease in the spread of that tumour.
It does so by targeting fibrosis, the scar-like tissue which forms around pancreatic cancer tumours. Chemotherapy struggles to penetrate fibrosis and can actually make it worse.
We almost have a double whammy there, which is that not only is fibrosis part of the tumour to begin with, but the drugs that are designed to kill the tumour increase it further.
The next step is clinical trials on humans next year, the same drug also undergoing patient studies for another cancer.
The study is currently in bone marrow cancer. We're just finishing the first stage, which has shown promising results.
This form of pancreatic cancer carries a devastating prognosis. Right now, fewer than 10% of patients will live more than 5 years. But if this drug performs as well in human trials, it will buy them more time and potentially better quality of life.
To have time is a gift.
Dr Nick Coatsworth, 9 News.
The battle is on to save Katoomba's legendary Paragon Cafe. The heritage-listed Paragon has been graffitied and has suffered water damage since it closed 5 years ago after more than a century of operation. Under state laws, owners of heritage buildings must maintain them, and the Heritage Council is looking at whether it should step in. The Paragon's owners say they expect to start work on restoring the cafe to its former glory this year. Cardiologists are calling it a game changer, a new pill that cuts bad cholesterol levels by 65%. The drug targets lipoprotein A, a previously untreatable sticky form of cholesterol, which increases the risk of blood clots. The Monash University trial found the pill slashed cholesterol levels after 2 weeks, but patients would likely need to take it permanently. It's a big bill that almost half of Australians pay each year, and it's getting bigger. Data obtained by 9 News shows home and contents premiums are skyrocketing regardless of where you live, and loyal customers are hardest hit.
It was an email that had Sandra and Kevin Bowley bowled over.
255%, yeah.
That's a 255% jump in the couple's home and contents insurance. Budget Direct raising their yearly premium from $1,400 to $3,600.
I instantly thought they'd definitely made a mistake. But they hadn't.
They live right on Lake Macquarie in Swansea.
I haven't had bushfires around me, I haven't flooded, so why are you charging me more?
No matter where you live, insurers say it's costing more for them to insure us.
The string of natural disasters that we've had over the last few years, inflation across the economy and the cost of reinsurance.
It's already having a big impact. Premiums in New South Wales have jumped 30% or $513 since last year, according to CanStar.
Amy, Australia Post, Budget Direct, Kogan and QBE are the winners of this year's CanStar Home and Contents Insurance Awards. CanStar says if you switch to one of these providers, you could save nearly $800 this year.
They collected as many as 34,000 quotes. It balanced the features with the price to find ones that give overall great value.
But Kevin and Sandra were originally with CanStar pick Budget Direct. By signing a new deal with Allianz, they saved $1,500.
The longer you stay with an insurance company, the less of the better deals you're getting. They're always reserved for new customers.
Advice worth saving. Bianca Balzer, 9 News.
Sydney's Fringe Festival opens this week, expanding into the entertainment quarter at Moore Park for the first time. The new precinct will, organisers say, bring all the razzle-dazzle of the Big Top to Sydney. It's the state's biggest independent arts festival, with more than 450 events in 70 venues across the city. A popular Sydney bookstore has been named one of the best in the world. Ampersand Cafe and Bookstore in Paddington placed 15th in a list by 100 Libraries, a popular Instagram account profiling must-visit spots for bookworms. Ireland's Trinity College Library took out top spot.